Discovered. The incredible secrets inside a suitcase my daughter-in-law threw in the lake. Jim stood on the edge of the gray, choppy lake, disbelief washing over him as his daughter-in-law Sarah walked away, her disdain echoing in his mind. "This is just junk," she had shouted, flinging the weathered suitcase into the water with an intensity that felt personal. How could she dismiss something so entrenched in his family's legacy? He could almost feel his grandfather's spirit in those battered seams. An inventor's dreams drowned in a murky blend of water and class anger. For decades, Jim had dedicated his life to fixing things: cars, engines, his family's worn-out pickup truck, the needs of his neighbors, all without a second thought. He valued hard work, loyalty, and simple honesty above everything. But this made him question it all. Sarah had everything, and with it came a scoffing chin and condescension that unsettled him. It fed his growing sense of inadequacy, amplified when he looked at his son Michael, a bright man forging his own path away from their small-town roots, marrying a woman who saw the world through wealth-tinted glasses. Fear twisted in Jim's gut. Should he confront Sarah? Call her out? Would it create a rift with Michael that he couldn't recover from? He hesitated. Every thought was like a steel trap snatching at the tightness in his chest. Doubt festered like rust on a neglected car. Just then something tugged at him, a fragment of determination. He couldn't let this go. Not with the suitcase, not with the legacy of his grandfather, a man overshadowed by the class prejudices that still lived in the murky undercurrents of their town. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each moment that ticked by tightened the knot in his stomach, as his hand grazed the icy water's surface. As he waded deeper, the cold seeped through his jeans, slamming into his bones with each step. He needed to go deeper. The suitcase represented the memories, hopes, and failures embedded in his bloodline. How could he possibly share this with Michael when the very essence of his lineage seemed mocked by Sarah? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he felt a familiar shape beneath the water, pulling it up through the murkiness like a lifeline. As he grasped the suitcase, each tug brought heavy memories of his grandfather. This wasn't just junk. It was love wrapped in faded photographs and handwritten letters, leftovers of the dreams that could have been all kept in a suitcase now mottled with the weight of both water and regret. Shivering, he opened the suitcase. A treasure trove of dreams lay before him. But mixed with this thrill was an unsettling awareness of Sarah's place in his life, and how her presence redefined everything he believed to be sacred about family. She had reduced his history to garbage. What else might she devalue? And yet, as he studied the fragile remnants of hope, he sensed a vulnerability in Sarah that he had never expected. Their lives were tangled now, two worlds colliding, feelings rising through the depths of secrets. Should he confront her? A part of him screamed to reclaim his dignity, but what if he drove his son away? The lake whispered uncertainties. Would he dare to stitch family loyalty with ambition? Or would it tear them apart? As the suitcase's weight steadied in his grip, Jim teetered on the edge of a decision that felt like it could reshape everything. With the damp cloth of the suitcase draped over his arm, Jim felt a strange mix of warmth and trepidation wash over him. He stood knee-deep in water that still clung to the wintry essence of the lake, yet within his hands was the repository of dreams and aspirations that had been brushed aside. The air, thick with tension, offered no reprieve as he waded back to the shore and anchored his gaze on the house where Michael and Sarah now resided. His heart resonated against the silence, echoing the questions that hung heavily in his mind. How did he let this happen? A wave of frustration surged through him. Was he so easily derided? Did someone like Sarah represent the failure of everything he had raised his son to respect? Each thought blossomed into its own pending confrontation, tools of dissection against not just Sarah, but the burgeoning chasm it was creating between him and Michael. His first instinct was to write off the battle. After all, confrontation meant risking everything. Family was paramount. Yet Sarah threatened to unravel the threads that connected him to Michael. The boy who had once clung to him as a child now seemed ensnared by a world that mocked their roots. Perhaps it was time to approach Michael, to share what he had found, to unlock the truths packaged neatly within the remnants of his grandfather's idealism. As he brushed the water from the suitcase, it felt too burdensome to be merely an object. It was a physical manifestation of a foundational question. What did it mean to be successful? The more Jim wrestled with this, the more he realized how the definitions of success had shifted, aligning with the contemporary landscape that seemed to overshadow his values. Was it possible that his very beliefs were outdated? Perhaps that was how Sarah perceived him, clinging to scraps of history while others danced on the precipice of modernity. Noticing a park bench by the shore, Jim took a moment to gather his thoughts, each one a gnawing fear. He felt as though he was standing at the cusp of an important change. Was he ready to fight for his son? Was he equipped with the aptitude to challenge the perception Sarah displayed so often? The suitcase sat beside him like a sentinel, urging him to reflect on what had been lost, and what could be rebuilt. It was jarring to recognize that the pieces within weren't just remnants of a past, they were guides to reclaiming a future. Within the battered object lay letters that detailed visions of a better life, sketches drafted by hands that longed to create. Could he show this to Michael? Would it help bridge the divide? It wasn't just a preservation of memories. It served as evidence that buried beneath the agony of class disparity was a legacy rich with resilience. And perhaps it was his role to illuminate that legacy to his son. As these conclusions spiraled through, clarity pierced the fog of doubt. He would invite Michael down to the lake, initiate a conversation that was both a challenge and an embrace. It would require vulnerability, but the push of inadequacy was now met with an unwavering determination. He wouldn't let the weight of privilege silence the dreams sewn into the fabric of his family's history. The time had come to face the simmering tensions head-on. Jim tightened his grip around the suitcase. There was no denying it now. He needed to confront Sarah with the history that transcended her sneering dismissal. The aching void left by her ignorance could be filled with understanding if he only had the courage. But would Michael stand with him? Or would he find himself further estranged? As he turned to head home, the suitcase felt less like a weighted anchor and more like a herald of possibilities. How would Michael respond to the truths hidden in its folds? Each step carried him closer to an undeniable moment that could alter the path for all of them. For the first time, Jim ventured to question. Was he ready to tear down the facades and reveal family legacies, no matter the cost? As the house came into view, he felt the undeniable pressure of that impending confrontation. It was time to return to Michael, to stitch together the hope and heartache of generations. The house loomed before Jim as he approached, its familiar silhouette cast in the fading light of the day. A sense of urgency quickened his steps. Each footfall echoed the growing resolve within him. The suitcase, no longer just an object from the past, felt like a vessel of potential. He clutched it tightly, its presence a reminder of the weighty truths it held, waiting to shift the dynamics of his fractured family. Standing on the porch, a chill crept over him, not from the late winter breeze but from the doubt that clawed at the edges of his determination. He hesitated, picturing the words he wanted to impart to Michael. Would they create a bridge or widen the gulf that had formed between them? This uncertainty gnawed at his insides. He knocked firmly, an act of defiance against the suffocating grasp of fear that threatened to pull him away from confronting it all. The door opened to reveal Michael, his eyes reflecting surprise but quickly morphing into something defensive. The shadow of Sarah lingered just behind him, her presence a stark reminder of the complex layer of emotions intertwined with this moment. Jim felt the urge to retreat, but the suitcase's weight in his grip anchored him. "Dad," Michael's tone was cautious, as if gauging whether to step forward or push back. "What brings you here? Can we talk?" Jim urged, forcing the words out through a throat constricted with tension. He hoped to strip the conversation of its potential for anger but sensed a tightness in the air. "About what?" Michael's brow furrowed. Behind him, Sarah crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe, her unyielding gaze a barrier to Jim's entrance. "About us. About family. And about this." Jim stepped forward, holding the suitcase above the threshold like an offering. The gesture was both inviting and vulnerable, exposing his hidden fears alongside his longing for connection. "What's that?" Michael asked, eyes narrowing curiously. It's our history," Jim replied, his heart hammering as he fought to maintain the conviction in his voice. I found it by the lake, and it holds more than just memories. I believe it can help us understand each other better. Sarah's skepticism was palpable, and Jim could sense it thickening the atmosphere. She opened her mouth to speak, to dismiss, to belittle. It didn't matter which. He needed to hold steady. Here lay his chance to redefine what it meant to be a father to Michael, to stand firm against the currents of misunderstanding. I don't need you to lecture me about history, Michael interjected, frustration bleeding into his voice. I live in the present. We both do. Exactly, Jim said, driven by a sudden rush of insight. And that's why we can learn from what has come before. This suitcase, he glanced at his son, searching for connection in his gaze. It's not just about nostalgia. It's about understanding where we come from, the struggles, the dreams they held. There's more than you think. Michael's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of curiosity mixing with resistance. Jim felt the moment teeter precariously. If he could just uncover the link between them, perhaps it could bridge the rift. Just let me show you, please. Jim lowered the suitcase before them, cautiously unbuttoning the worn clasp. As he flung open the lid, letters spilled out, their yellowed pages like whispers from the past begging to be acknowledged. Or we can just go on pretending we're fine, Jim pressed, feeling the urgency swell within him. But that's not living, is it? Panic danced beneath the surface of Michael's calm. An uncertainty flickered across Sarah's face. It was clear they were not prepared for this confrontation. Would Michael close down further? Or would he dare to explore the legacy laid before him? Jim's heart raced as he braced himself for an answer he needed more than ever. The moment hung like a fragile thread, waiting for someone to snap it. Would Michael lean into the memories they were about to confront? Or would he retreat from the truths that could offer redemption? What if Michael's reaction to the past held the key to unlocking a future they had never imagined? Jim could feel the tide of change about to crash, and there was no turning back now. The letters tumbled from the suitcase, unfurling their tails like petals in a breeze. Each crinkled page held a fragment of history, moments that had long been buried under layers of resentment and neglect. Jim's fingers trembled as he lifted the first letter, its words barely decipherable, yellowed with age. He turned to Michael, whose expression danced between indifference and intrigue. Just read it, Jim urged, his voice a mix of desperation and hope. Each word could provide us with clarity we didn't know we needed. Silence enveloped them, thick and heavy, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Michael's gaze flicked from the letters back to Jim, a mixture of skepticism and raw curiosity flickering in his eyes. The tension in the air crackled, and Jim could see the ghost of emotion warring within his son, a struggle between wanting to connect and the fortress of fear protecting his heart. Sarah's presence loomed, her voice a low growl. This is just a stunt, isn't it? You think some dusty letters can undo years of distance? I think we have a choice, Jim replied, injecting a calmness into his voice that he scarcely felt. We can either examine the past together or let it continue to separate us. It's up to you. Choice. Sarah scoffed. What choice do we have if you refuse to see how damaging this is? Ignoring Sarah, Jim focused solely on Michael. In that moment he needed to reach deeper, to cut through the layers of their strained relationship. Michael, this is not just for me. It's for you. For us. We might find truths that could bring us closer. With a hesitant hand, Michael lifted one of the letters, his thumb brushing over the faded ink as he unfolded it. Jim watched, heart pounding, as Michael's expression shifted, his defenses cracking ever so slightly. The words on the page were nearly alive, breathing life into the memories they both tried to escape. As Michael began to read, Jim felt a rush of vulnerability pooled in his chest. This was uncharted emotional territory, and he was all too aware of how impossibly wounded they had all been. He had spent years avoiding confrontations, burying his grief under a facade of indifference. The suitcase represented more than just history. It was a tangible manifestation of all the unspoken truths he had evaded. Dear Jim, Michael read aloud, and his voice wavered with the weight of those two words. The letter continued, recounting moments of joy and pain, his mother's dreams, her struggles, the sacrifices she made. Jim's eyes blurred with tears he hadn't expected, each word washing over him like a flood, letting its weight push him further into vulnerability. He watched more intently as Michael's brows knitted together, his heart grasping for understanding. And what do you feel now? Jim asked softly, knowing that this was a critical moment. Do you see her? Do you see us? This is a chance to make sense of everything. Michael's breath hitched. The walls he had built seemed to tremble at the sound of vulnerability escaping him. This changes things. An invitation dangled in the air like the faint aroma of unfulfilled potential. Could they navigate the complexities of their relationship long submerged in silence? Jim sensed something shifting, growing within their space, a chance for connection sprouting in the cracks of their hurt. But just as hope began to flow through the cracks, the weight of Sarah's glare threatened to push it back down. You think that even reading those letters will change the way he feels about you? You're mistaken. The sting of her words struck Jim, but the determination grew. That's not up to you, he replied, the cadence of empowerment rising in his voice. Michael deserves to hear this, to know the truth. Are you willing to let him? The question hung heavily, and Jim prepared himself for the storm. Would Michael choose to embrace this newfound connection, or would he yield to skepticism in silence? Jim held his breath, and the tension palpable in his chest, echoing the heartbeats of their uncertain futures. But as Jim held the silent space ripe with potential, he sensed that the real confrontation was yet to unfold. What if Sarah's resistance was more than mere skepticism? What if she harbored secrets that could shatter the fragile peace they had just begun to forge? The air crackled with tension as Jim braced himself, his heart racing. Sarah's glare pierced through the room, a warning, an ultimatum wrapped in disbelief. Her words hung like a thick fog, layering doubt over the emerging moment he'd longed for. Michael's fingers were still clutching the letter, but uncertainty clouded his expression. Michael, you have a right to understand the truth, Jim said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. He sought to anchor this moment, to ensure it didn't slip through the cracks of skepticism. You deserve to know her, even if it's through letters. Michael shifted under Jim's gaze, searching for acknowledgement in his father's eyes. But how can this change anything? Still just words on a page. The heaviness in his voice revealed a deeper fear of false hope, of even allowing himself to be vulnerable. But what if those words unlock memories you've buried, or answers you've craved? Jim countered. The air was thick with possibility and dread, a fragile thread connecting them. Sometimes we need the past to guide our future. The room buzzed with unspoken truths, the shadows of their shared history waiting to be illuminated. Jim's resolve hardened. He had spent far too many years retreating into silence. The letters represented a choice, a chance for redemption in this tangled web of family dynamics. What if you find out that the truth was never what you thought? He pressed, casting a gaze toward Sarah, who stood rigid, fists clenched. What if the weight of those words is what finally helps us break free? As Michael resumed reading, the tension shifted subtly, a precarious balance of hope stirring on one side and doubt lingering on the other. The letters spoke of dreams and fears, laying a foundation of understanding that might finally create a bridge between him and his son. Do you think she wanted us to suffer? Michael's question cut through the growing noise. It was the first time his voice had barely concealed the longing beneath the fortress of his defenses. I think she wanted us to remember, Jim offered gently, his heart aching with the weight of his words. There's love wrapped in every letter, love that we might finally acknowledge. Sarah's stance faltered, and for the first time Jim sensed a crack in her walls. But immediately she rallied, her skepticism rekindled. What if these letters undo any progress we've made? You think this is going to bring us closer? Could just as easily unravel everything. Jim's gaze slid back to Michael, who was still engrossed in the letter. We can't be afraid of the messiness of life, Sarah. Sometimes we must wade through the ugliness to find light. The walls of the room seemed to shift, pressure building as he navigated uncharted territory. Michael lowered the letter, his eyes reflecting confusion and frustration. So you just want me to do this? Because you think it'll fix everything? There was a storm brewing behind his words, a mixture of expectation and trepidation. Jim took a breath, his mind racing. I want you to see the whole picture, the beauty and the scars. Vulnerability can be daunting, but you're not alone in this. Just as Jim felt a glimmer of hope, a thunderous rattle of unresolved feelings ricocheted through the air. He realized the real battle wasn't the past. It was their ability to confront the present with honesty. This revelation seemed to ignite some kind of internal shift within Michael, But as Michael sorted through his thoughts, the unease returned like a dark cloud. "And what about Sarah?" he asked, shifting the focus back to her, the tension palpable. "What if she has something else to say?" Jim's pulse quickened. His challenge wasn't simply to guide Michael through the layers of the past, but also to face Sarah's growing animosity head-on. Igniting those buried secrets could ignite a fire that was both rejuvenating and destructive. Jim could feel it tightening in his chest. This moment held the potential to redefine everything, but it required everyone to embrace discomfort. "Sarah, there's something you're not saying. Is there a reason you're so resistant to the truth?" With that question hanging like a guillotine, Jim realized he had pushed the boundaries to the edge. The next step would determine whether they could forge a new path, or if the shadows from the past would consume them all. But the silence that followed was thick, a smothering blanket that threatened to suffocate both courage and revelation. What lay ahead now was an unturning confrontation, a moment where secrets could either heal or create deeper divides. The room fell into an unyielding silence, each person grappling with their own tumultuous thoughts. Jim felt a rush of urgency propelling him forward, but he was tethered by the gravity of their unspoken fears. Michael's face was a canvas of conflicting emotions, anger fighting against need, curiosity clashing with apprehension. Jim studied his son intently, searching for an entry point, a thread they could pull to unravel the chaos tightly bound within their family. "Look, Michael," Jim began, leaning slightly forward, eyes fixed. "I get that it's hard to process all this. But think about it. When we keep things buried, they don't just disappear. They fester like an untreated wound. Wouldn't you want to know the source of your pain?" Michael shifted in his seat, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across his face. The urgency in Jim's voice seemed to penetrate the wall of reluctance surrounding him. "What if I find out something that changes everything?" Michael asked. The fear in his tone became a spellbinding echo that filled the room. "What if the truth is more than I can handle?" The question haunted Jim. It was not just fear of knowledge but fear of how transformations could ripple through their lives. Yet he also understood that avoiding the truth was a different kind of prison, one that kept them tangled in regrets and suspicion. "Sarah," Jim directed his attention back at her, trying to peel away the layers of her hostility. "You're the one holding back. Your silence speaks volumes." Anger and hurt danced across her expression, but shadows of uncertainty crept in as well. "Do you think I haven't had my own struggles? I spent years trying to piece together my own family after everything fell apart. I finally found some stability." The vulnerability in her words surprised Jim, a thin veneer of resentment cracking as an undercurrent of fear emerged. "Stability does not breed understanding." Jim's voice lowered, more empathetic now. "We can't build a future that honors the past without confronting it." The discomfort around them tangled with a sudden fierceness in Michael. "So let us just dig everything up, huh? What then? My entire life has been about trying to piece together something normal. What if this just makes it worse?" Jim saw the stalemate between them beginning to thaw. Behind Michael's anger lay a deep yearning for connection, a desire to break free from inherited tragedies. The letters and unspoken truths could offer a new path, one where their family began to heal together rather than apart. "You have every right to be angry, but we have to face it together," Jim said, lowering himself to Michael's eye level. An odd sense of equilibrium started to fill the space, an acknowledgement that vulnerability, while terrifying, could also be liberating. Sometimes when we confront the past, we find a version of ourselves that we didn't know existed. A stronger, more resilient self. At that moment, Michael's gaze held steady, uncertainty mingling with curiosity. Jim felt a surge of hope as he turned back to Sarah. "Can we try? I know it's not easy, but I truly believe that if we work through this, we can emerge stronger." "What's really at stake here?" Sarah's facade cracked further, revealing the pain behind her resolve. She took a deep breath, weighing the cost of vulnerability against the familiarity of the darkness they had clung to for so long. "Fine," she said slowly, her voice trembling. "But if we go down this road, we need to promise to be truthful, no matter how painful." The collective sigh of relief that washed over Jim felt monumental. It marked the dawn of a new chapter. They had taken their first real step toward honesty. As they gathered around Michael, ready to delve deeper into the contents of the letters, the silence shifted into a tentative bond woven from fragile trust. Together they embraced the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Just as Jim prepared to reveal what had been hidden within the letter, a sudden thought struck him, a disturbing realization that perhaps there were even deeper secrets lurking in there. Family history, secrets he was wholly unprepared to face. Feeling a chill run through him, he knew that this journey might just lead them into the very heart of their tumultuous past. What awaited them could either extinguish their fragile hope or illuminate the path to their collective healing. With their hearts racing, they turned their attention back to the letters and the shadows that danced, ready to unveil the truths that had long been concealed. The letters lay before them, crumpled and yellowed with age, like ancient artifacts waiting to reveal forgotten truths. Jim felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his shoulders. Each envelope, each carefully sealed flap, whispered stories that had been silenced for too long. As he reached for the first one, the atmosphere crackled with tension. It was clear they were standing on the precipice of a life-altering revelation. Michael's eyes darted from the letters to Jim, a palpable mix of anticipation and dread etched into his features. Sarah's gaze remained fixed, resolute, but there was an undercurrent of vulnerability as she wrestled with the uncharted territory ahead. Jim knew they were not just embarking on a journey through old letters. They were delving into the depths of their relationships, peeling back layers that had become so thick with pain and misunderstanding. "I'll start," Jim declared, forcing the quiver from his voice. He picked up an envelope addressed to his father, the ink faded but unmistakable. As he broke the seal, the air seemed to thicken, weighing heavily with the promise of discovery. Instantly, a flood of memories washed over him: his father's stern demeanor, the secrets he carried, and the silence that had long enveloped their family. "Dad, are you sure this is a good idea?" Michael interrupted, uncertainty lacing his voice as Jim unfolded the letter. "What if there's more hurt in there than we expect?" Jim paused, recognizing the genuine concern layered within Michael's question. "It's a risk, yes. But maybe this hurt is what we need to confront to move forward. We can't change the past, but we might find understanding." As he read aloud, the words pulled them into a world of hope and despair. His father's voice spilled forth, detailing dreams unfulfilled, love lost, and struggles fought in silence. Each revelation struck Jim deeply. He saw the fragility of their existence reflected in his father's struggles, recounting the burdens inherited from one generation to the next. The revelations were both painful and enlightening, revealing a lineage of sacrifice and unspoken trauma. Sarah shifted in her seat, her tension palpable as she listened. This is hard," she confessed, her voice trembling. "But maybe it's necessary." Encouraged by her willingness to engage, Jim picked up a second letter, this one addressed to him. He could feel his heart race as he envisioned what it might hold. A message long buried under layers of resentment. Even Michael leaned in, curiosity igniting a sense of shared discovery. "What if it's something we wish we never found?" Michael murmured, anxiety creeping back in as Jim opened the letter. Inside, he discovered a penned apology, words that expressed regret for missed moments, love shaded by silence, and a longing for reconciliation. "Dad, what does it say?" Michael urged, leaning forward, eagerness wrestling with his apprehension. Jim knew this was pivotal. It wasn't merely about what the letter contained but how they would absorb its message. "It's a chance at understanding. It acknowledges our pain, and it opens up the possibility of healing." As he shared the words aloud, each sentence draped over them like a solemn mantle. The room felt charged with emotion, the air thickening with shared histories and the potential for newfound understanding. They were confronting not just the facts presented in the letters, but also the emotional landscapes that had shaped their family. Michael's expression morphed from anger to contemplation, struggling to process the evolving narrative. Maybe there's something we can learn from each of these letters," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Maybe it's about how we do better moving forward." Jim's heart swelled with a mix of hope and trepidation. They were not just unraveling past pain. They were rewriting their future. As he set the letter aside, he felt he was no longer just a father or a husband but a catalyst for change, inspiring courage in those he loved. As the discussion continued, each participant shedding layers of their guarded selves, the door to deeper dialogue swung open. Jim sensed an urgency. Truths were surfacing, but there were still unexamined corners of their past shrouded in darkness. "Wait," Michael said suddenly, a pulse of realization flashing across his features. What happens if we read one letter and find something even darker? Something that could break us apart again? The room held its breath as Jim contemplated the implication. They were on the edge of making a choice. Either confront the heavier truths laid in waiting or retreat and clutch at the frayed edges of comfort. The letter wasn't just a window into their past, it was a threshold to their future. However, just as the thought settled, Jim caught sight of another envelope, tucked away at the bottom of the pile, red wax seal intact. A chill coursed through him. Perhaps this last letter harbored the deadliest secrets of all. Could it offer liberation? Or would it shift their fragile balance into chaos? Before we continue, we need to prepare ourselves, Jim cautioned, heavy uncertainty mixing with the adrenaline of discovery. We can't ignore what might come next. As he reached for the final envelope, their collective breaths caught in anticipation, a quiet synergy igniting between them. What lay ahead could either shatter their nascent bond or forge an unbreakable connection. Jim could only hope it would be the latter. Jim's fingers trembled as he held the final envelope, the wax seal glistening ominously under the dim light. The entire room buzzed with raw energy, each person's breathing echoing in a precarious rhythm akin to the pounding of a drum. He could feel the weight of the moment, not just the envelope itself, but what it symbolized. The culmination of fears, the possibility of devastation, and the chance for profound connection. He turned the envelope over cautiously, half expecting it to burst open with secrets. There was no turning back now. This was not merely an exploration of words from the past. It was a confrontation with the shared fears that lingered unaddressed, a test of their emerging resolve. "Are you ready?" Jim asked, and for a fleeting moment, he met Michael's anxious gaze. A flicker of doubt lurked in Michael's eyes, but beneath that hesitance lay an undeniable determination that mirrored Jim's own. Sarah, sitting slightly hunched, poised for whatever hidden truths might cascade from the letter, signaled that she was with him, ready to face whatever came next. With a decisive breath, Jim broke the seal and pulled out the letter. The paper was worn yet sturdy, and as he unfolded it, he could feel the collective tension in the air solidify into a palpable presence. Words began to flow, echoing in his mind as he read silently, processing each line before deciding what to share aloud. "Dear son," he began, his voice steady but tinged with apprehension. "This letter is not just an apology, it's a reckoning." As he spoke, Jim felt a strange lightness mingling with the heaviness of the moment. Layers of fear peeled away with each word, revealing glimmers of clarity beneath the past's accumulated weight. Jim's father's words painted a landscape of regret, mapping a history riddled with mistakes and unspoken sentiments. Long-hidden struggles spilled forth doubts about self-worth, unfulfilled ambitions, and a yearning for connection that had been stifled by pride and miscommunication. Each sentence seemed to draw them closer, unraveling the tightly bound threads of secrecy and shame that had burdened their relationship. As Jim shared the letter, he could see the realization etching itself onto Michael's face. "He was just scared," Michael murmured, barely above a whisper. "Scared and human. We all are." A wave of understanding passed through Jim. This shared vulnerability was a bridge, spanning the chasm forged by their past grievances. Sarah, who had remained silent, suddenly sat taller, her posture transforming from tension to resolve. "If your father felt this way, maybe it's just as important for us to express what we need from one another, especially now." The solidarity of their shared intention was invigorating, igniting a flame of courage. There was a new direction unfolding, and Jim recognized that the emotional landscape had shifted. It was no longer just about revealing secrets or unearthing hidden grievances. It was about fostering the ironclad honesty necessary to build a brighter future, one conversation at a time. They were architects of their emotional reality now, capable of shaping connections that had previously felt irretrievable. As Jim continued to read, revealing layers of pain and yearning from his father, he grasped the undeniable truth that emerged. The letter wasn't just a reflection of the past. It was an invitation to confront their own unexpressed needs, to share their vulnerabilities, and to be honest about their aspirations as a family unit. In that moment, he resolved to cultivate an environment that welcomed emotions rather than shunned them, a commitment to practice open communication moving forward. There was something raw and vital hidden in those words, the promise of change. "Should we write our own letters?" Sarah suggested, her enthusiasm palpable. "Each of us could share what we've been holding back." Jim nodded thoughtfully, warmth spreading through him at the idea. The thought excited him. It was both daunting and liberating, a chance to begin anew in the way they related to one another. Michael's brows furrowed as doubt ignited within him. What if it's too much? What if, after writing them, we discover things we can't bear? The room fell into contemplative silence, the air thickening with the weight of this new prospect. Jim took a moment to absorb his son's fear, while simultaneously feeling a swell of determination inside him. If we want growth, we have to confront discomfort, he said firmly. Trust that our bonds can withstand it. As he weighed those words, he could sense their potential to transform him, to elevate their conversations beyond the surface-level exchanges that had previously marred their interactions. They were on the cusp of something monumental, urging them to explore the uncharted depths of their emotional landscapes. However, as the idea blossomed between them, an unsettling thought crept in, lingering in the shadows of that hopeful moment. What if they opened letters of their own and unearthed truths too heavy to carry? What if this journey revealed fissures they couldn't mend? Jim's thoughts raced, the gravity of uncertainty pressing down like lead. With the night shifting around them, a mixture of excitement and fear bubbled beneath the surface, promising both liberation and turmoil in the chapters to come. As they contemplated their next steps, he grasped that while they could forge a new path, the echoes of their past were still present, a reminder that facing one's truth is the first step towards genuine transformation. Let us take a breath, Jim said softly, intending to ground them. Whatever we write or share next, it's about growing together. We can hold each other accountable to that. Now, standing on the brink of self-discovery, each sensed the weight of their own hidden truths reaching out like a quiet murmur. What did they truly yearn to express? The air was thick with the unsaid, and Jim could only hope they would find the strength to embrace that vulnerability. As they prepared to draft their own letters, hints of trepidation mingled with a sense of shared resolve. But deep within, an unsettling question lingered: would they emerge stronger, truly transformed, or would the revelations lead to an unraveling they could not control? Jim could feel the electric hum of anticipation ripple through the room as he sat at the small desk, papers blank before him. The flicker of the candle cast playful shadows, illuminating the emotional weight he and his family had stirred. Despite the shared resolve, an undercurrent of doubt flooded his thoughts. What if their letters only reopened wounds that had barely begun to heal? As he stared at the blank page, Jim grappled with the intent behind his own words. Each letter promised not merely an account of feelings but profound revelations of truth, of desires long suppressed. He could almost hear his father's voice warning him about the dangers of transparency, the fragility of honesty. Yet, the resolve he felt from the letter moments ago anchored him. He would not shy away this time. Okay, he thought, breathing deeply as he picked up a pen. Let's give voice to what we've kept silent. He began slowly, hesitant at first, but the words poured out as if they had been waiting in the dark, eager to surface. Writing felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating. He penned down honest reflections about his own insecurities as a father, the times he felt inadequate, the mistakes he wished he could erase. Acknowledging his vulnerability was new, but to create an atmosphere of trust, he needed to lead by example. Jim's heart began to race as he reached deeper, pulling memories from the tangled web of his past, both light and shadow. Each confession acted like a key unlocking buried emotions. Nameless fears of failure, resentment for the opportunities he let slip away, and the distant echoes of laughter he had missed in pursuit of success began to spill onto the page. His focus sharpened. The room fell silent around him, intensifying his thoughts. Would sharing these truths empower Sarah and Michael to do the same, or would it force them to confront darkness they weren't prepared to face? A fresh wave of doubt washed over him. He had seen how the truth could devastate, yet the need for transparency felt electrifying, an urge, an instinctive pulling towards connection breaking his concentration. He glanced up. Sarah was seated nearby, her gaze fixed on her own blank page. He observed her struggle. The slight shaking of her hand told him she was processing similar depths of emotion. Michael, half hidden by the glow of the candle's light, was absent from the unfolding conversations within his mind, but even his quiet presence spoke volumes about the seismic shifts occurring among them. Jim considered that maybe their fears weren't so different. Perhaps by revealing his own shortcomings, he could foster safety for them to share too. He focused on the letter, hoping to lay the groundwork for conversations that could heal rather than harm. Each word he chose carried not just his vulnerability, but a responsibility towards the future he envisioned could sustain their damaged bonds. Dear Sarah and Michael, he wrote as he turned to a new section of the page, a fresh resolve pulsing through him. I fear the weight of our unspoken words might drown us if we allow the silence to persist. The evening wore on, the air thick with collective effort as every stroke of the pen seemed to bridge the distance etched by years of unresolved issues. Time lost its hold as the first stirrings of liberation mingled with apprehension. Yet, silently, a nagging thought began to gnaw at him. What if confronting their truths brought not the unity he desired, but an escalation of long-ignored resentments? Old grievances lay dormant, potentially ready to surface, fragile and volatile. Jim hesitated, fingers hovering above the paper, wrestling with the choice before him, and that moment, a startling realization hit him. Growth is forged in adversity, but pitfalls lie in leaving damaging truths unsaid. If they stepped towards transparency, they had to navigate it together. Each letter served as a testament to their commitment not just to honesty, but to each other as healing processes, compensating for past neglect. His breath caught in his throat. Was he ready to risk it all? Jim fashioned another sentence, bold yet cautious. Together we can confront the truths we fear and discover more profound connections. Just then, a shuffling from Michael drew his attention, as if the boy were fanning the flames of doubt ignited in him. Was this truly a path forward, or simply an illusion of resolution? The words sent a ripple through Jim. The time had come to face what they had all been avoiding, to either shatter their fragile bonds or construct something anew. Jim's pulse quickened as he prepared to finish his thoughts. In doing so, he realized clarity trumped fear. The transition from avoidance to confrontation was just a step away, one that could redefine their family forever. As he looked up, he wondered what weight each letter would bring. The truth loomed larger than before, both daunting and exhilarating. Each truth shared was a whisper of hope, yet unveiled fear still settled heavily in the air, reminding him that the real test awaited. Are we truly ready for this? He questioned silently, surrounded by the remnants of their past burdens. The evening faded into contemplation, each of their messages skimming the surface of their reality, just waiting to be revealed. Now they had crossed the threshold, but would they be brave enough to face what's hidden beneath? Jim's fingers brushed against the completed letter, the ink heavy with his vulnerabilities. Each word represented not just a challenge to confront the past, but also a stepping stone toward a brighter future. A sense of calm washed over him. He stepped into a territory previously dominated by fear but now felt exhilarating. Dear Sarah and Michael, he read aloud, his voice clear despite the tremors of uncertainty. I fear the weight of our unspoken words might drown us if we allow the silence to persist. I've avoided difficult conversations for too long, allowing the tensions between us to fester. Each line was saturated with both anticipation and trepidation, embodying the courage he had sought to summon for so long. As he continued, Jim felt a shift. The atmosphere thickened as they leaned forward, and he saw Michael soften in response, his guarded exterior cracking. I acknowledge my insecurities, the moments where I failed to share my true self with you both. I hid behind work, thinking it would provide for us, but all it did was build a wall I didn't realize was there. Michael's gaze flickered with recognition, a shared understanding blooming in the space between father and son. Dad, it's okay, he murmured gently, intrigue lacing his tone, urging Jim to go on. I think we all have things we need to express. Jim felt the nudge of hope stirring in his chest. In revealing my shortcomings, I open a door for us all. I want our family to embrace transparency. By inviting each other into those shadowed corners, we can breathe life into the tender truths that bind us. Jim paused to catch his breath and watched Sarah trace the lines on her own letter, her resolve illuminating the room. It was then that he noticed her eyes shimmer, a flicker of vulnerability that had long been masked by her composed exterior. I don't want everything we've buried to suffocate our potential, he added softly. Together we can rise above the scars that have made us who we are today. Unexpected warmth ignited between them, as if the weight of their collective truths began to evaporate. There was power in his words, stirring them into action. What if we stopped fearing the discomfort and instead reframed it as our path to growth? He proposed, the fervor sparking in his voice. With newfound determination, he beheld their collection of letters, viewing them not as mere remains from breaches of their past, but as keys to a future teeming with possibility. Every word we write, every hope we express becomes a thread weaving us back together, he encouraged. But what if the wounds we uncover hurt us more? Sarah interjected, her voice steadier now. What if it becomes too much? Her sentiment tethered the room, a reminder that healing can be as overwhelming as it is liberating. The truth is often difficult, Jim acknowledged, and while we may stumble as we navigate these revelations, we carry the ability to rebuild and strengthen our ties. He glanced at Michael. Finding our way through can guide us in shedding the weight of shame and resentment wrapped in our histories. As he continued reading his letter, Jim's tone grew more emphatic. Let us not just survive as a family, but thrive in our authenticity. He saw Michael's interest sharpening. He felt his son begin contemplating this brave expedition into vulnerability. Suddenly, Michael's voice broke the silence again, even softer now. So, we each write our letters and we share them, right? Yes, Jim affirmed, encouraged by Michael's inquiry. We can do this together, facing whatever truths arise, both sweet and painful. This could create our healing journey. The tension began to wane, allowing grace to seep in. As they all took ink to paper, Jim absorbed the gravity of the moment. He was no longer just Jim the father or Jim the husband, but Jim the whole man, aiming for transformation. With every stroke of his pen, Jim branded his truths onto the page. His aspirations for a family steeped in honesty, his commitment to love without reservations, and his desire to foster a safe space where fears could unfurl without judgment. Stepping into his recognition, he began to feel a solid confidence. He had transformed before his own eyes. He was reclaiming himself just as much as he was connecting with his family, threading a path from isolation to intimacy. Each of them, seated in that light-warmed space, began dropping their barriers, unearthing personal beliefs and stories often cast aside. The symbols of vulnerability etched in each letter morphed from mere words into lifelines, knitting their collective narrative into a tapestry adorned with threads of honesty and hope. As they shared their sentiments, Jim observed Michael's eyes shine with recognition, a reflection of both self-awareness and kinship. Sarah's once defensive demeanor softened as connections rekindled under the light of their shared truths. Perhaps we can transform our past, Michael whispered, reaching for his father, and build something entirely new. As they progressed deeper into their letters, every emotion embraced felt like a powerful surge, healing unfolding in tangible measures. Together they were capturing their legacy of resilience, and it settled warmly in Jim's heart. In that moment of transformation, Jim didn't merely witness a breakthrough. He experienced it as his own, the discovery of voice, purpose, and connection realized through the flowering of vulnerability. Jim had conquered fear and doubt, demonstrating to his family that success was rooted in transparency, compassion, and unwavering support amidst imperfections. It marked the start of a newly constructed relationship founded on honesty. One they would navigate together with resilience. Standing at the edge of the emotional awakening, Jim saw beyond the horizon of the past. Together, they had weathered a storm, but in that storm, they had discovered a shared intimacy filled with renewed promise. Now, equipped with resilience and a profound recognition of collective power, they could embrace the freedom that comes with vulnerability, redefining their legacy. Right then and there, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.